Have you ever looked at a younger woman showing genuine interest in an older man and thought, what does she possibly see in him? Most people immediately assume it's money, status, or some hidden agenda. But what if that's exactly where they're wrong? What if one of the strongest attraction triggers has almost nothing to do with wealth, perfect looks, or even age? Most men never realize this. The qualities that quietly attract younger women often become stronger after a man gets older. Ironically, these are the same qualities many older men completely overlook because they've spent years believing attraction is only about youth, muscles, or expensive lifestyles. And that's the misunderstanding that changes everything. Pay close attention because this changes everything. For decades, society has repeated one message: younger women only want younger men. Movies reinforce it, social media reinforces it, friends repeat it until it sounds like an unquestionable truth. But reality is often far more complicated. If you've ever noticed a younger woman laughing a little longer at something an older man says, holding eye contact just a little more, or naturally gravitating toward his presence in a room, there's usually something happening beneath the surface that most people never recognize. It isn't magic. It isn't luck. And it certainly isn't always about appearance. It's psychology. The fascinating part is that many older men accidentally possess this quality without realizing its value. Instead of appreciating it, they often hide it, apologize for it, or replace it by trying to act 25 again. Ironically, that's where many lose the very thing that made them attractive in the first place. But here's where it gets interesting. Female attraction rarely begins with what men think it does. Many men believe attraction starts with physical appearance and only later becomes emotional. In many situations, especially as women mature emotionally, the opposite can happen. A woman may first notice how a man makes her feel and only afterward begin to see him as physically attractive. Think about that for a moment. The emotional experience can actually reshape physical attraction. That's why you've probably seen couples where people ask, "How did he end up with her?" They're asking the wrong question. The better question is, how did he make her feel before anyone else did? Because attraction isn't simply about seeing someone, it's about experiencing someone. And older men often create an emotional experience they don't even know they're creating. Most men dismiss this because it feels too simple. They believe there has to be a secret line, a clever technique, or some dating trick. But female psychology is rarely impressed by tricks. Confidence can be imitated, charm can be rehearsed, luxury can be rented. But emotional certainty? That cannot be faked for very long. Younger women, whether consciously or subconsciously, are remarkably sensitive to emotional consistency. They notice who remains calm when everyone else is seeking validation. They notice who listens instead of competing for attention. They notice who doesn't desperately need approval. And surprisingly, these qualities often become stronger with age, not weaker. Yet here's the irony. Many older men spend enormous energy trying to erase every sign of getting older. They chase trends that don't fit them, they imitate younger men, they try to prove they're still cool. Without realizing it, they're abandoning the very characteristics that quietly make them stand out. What happens next may surprise you. Because the biggest attraction trigger isn't confidence itself, it's the hidden reason confidence feels different in certain older men. And once you understand that psychological difference, you'll never look at attraction or yourself the same way again. So, what is the first hidden principle that quietly attracts younger women? It isn't confidence, at least not the version most men think of. The real attraction begins with something psychologists often associate with emotional security. And here's the fascinating part. Many older men develop it naturally through life experience, while younger men often spend years trying to project it without actually possessing it. Most men never realize this. There's a massive difference between performing confidence and living with certainty. A younger man may walk into a room trying to prove he's important. He speaks loudly, dominates conversations, checks to see who's watching, and constantly seeks validation. An older man who truly understands himself often does the opposite. He doesn't rush to impress. He doesn't interrupt to sound smarter. He doesn't need everyone to agree with him. He simply exists comfortably in his own skin. And that emotional stability sends a powerful signal that many younger women pick up almost instantly. Why? Because human beings are naturally drawn toward emotional certainty. Imagine you're in a crowded room. One person is constantly seeking attention, laughing a little too hard, checking their phone every few seconds, and trying to be the center of every conversation. Another person speaks only when there's something meaningful to say. He listens carefully, he smiles without forcing it, he isn't trying to win the room. Who seems more intriguing? More importantly, who feels safer to be around? This is where female psychology becomes incredibly interesting. Many women aren't consciously thinking he's emotionally stable. Instead, they simply feel more relaxed in his presence. And emotions almost always come before logical explanations. A woman may tell herself she's attracted to his smile, his voice, or even his appearance. But beneath those surface reasons is something much deeper. Her nervous system feels calm around him. That calmness becomes associated with attraction. But here's where it gets interesting. Calm should never be confused with passivity. Many men hear this advice and think they should become quiet, agreeable, or emotionally unavailable. That's not emotional certainty. That's emotional absence. The difference is enormous. An emotionally secure man isn't afraid to disagree respectfully. He doesn't avoid difficult conversations. He sets boundaries without becoming angry. He expresses interest without becoming desperate. And when something doesn't go his way, he doesn't fall apart emotionally. That quiet resilience is surprisingly rare. Consider two different dates. The first man becomes anxious every time there's a moment of silence. He fills every gap with nervous talking. If she checks her phone, he immediately assumes she's losing interest. The second man isn't disturbed by silence. He enjoys the conversation without forcing it. If she disagrees with him, he smiles and explores her perspective instead of trying to win. If plans change, he adapts rather than complains. Which man creates emotional comfort? Which one feels unpredictable in the best possible way? Exactly. What happens next may surprise you. Studies in relationship psychology consistently suggest that emotional regulation is one of the strongest predictors of long-term relationship satisfaction. While initial attraction may begin with physical appearance, lasting attraction often grows from how consistently someone manages emotions under pressure. In other words, your reactions reveal more about your value than your words ever could. This is why many younger women describe certain older men as different. Not because they have perfect lives, not because they've stopped making mistakes, but because they've stopped letting every little setback control their emotions. That emotional steadiness feels refreshing in a world filled with constant drama and instant gratification. Yet this is only the beginning, because emotional certainty creates attraction. But there's another hidden behavior that transforms attraction into genuine fascination. And once you understand why younger women instinctively notice this next quality, you'll begin to see countless interactions in a completely different light. So far, you've discovered that emotional certainty creates a sense of safety. But safety alone doesn't create attraction. This is where most men get confused. They become dependable, but predictable, kind, but forgettable, available, but no longer exciting. And that's because attraction isn't built on comfort alone. It's built on the balance between security and mystery. Most men never realize this. The older men who naturally attract younger women often have something that's impossible to fake, a life that doesn't revolve around getting female attention. Think about it. A man who has meaningful goals, hobbies, close friendships, and personal standards sends a completely different message than a man whose entire week depends on whether one woman texts him back. Women notice this far more than men realize, not because they're judging your schedule, because they're asking themselves one subconscious question: does this man have a life I'm curious to become part of? That's a completely different question from, can this man make me happy? The first creates fascination. The second creates pressure. But here's where it gets interesting. Many older men accidentally become more attractive because they've spent years building a life. They've developed skills, they've overcome setbacks, they've learned patience, they've found purpose beyond dating. Ironically, they often think these things are boring. They believe younger women only care about excitement. But purpose is exciting, direction is attractive. A man who genuinely enjoys his own life radiates something that can't be manufactured. Consider this simple example. Two men meet the same woman. The first immediately rearranges his entire schedule for her. He replies to every message within seconds. He cancels plans with friends. Every conversation revolves around impressing her. At first, she may enjoy the attention, but soon something begins to feel off. Without realizing it, she senses that she's become the center of his identity. Now imagine the second man. He enjoys talking to her. He makes time for her, but he also keeps his commitments. If he's working on a project, he finishes it. If he's spending time with family, he's fully present. If he's at the gym or pursuing a passion, he doesn't abandon it just because his phone lights up. Notice the difference. He's interested. He's not consumed. That distinction changes everything. Female psychology often responds to emotional independence because it communicates quiet confidence. It says, without words, I value this connection, but I also value myself. And that message is incredibly powerful. What happens next may surprise you. Many women describe this type of man as hard to explain. They'll say things like, I just feel drawn to him. There's something different about him. I can't quite figure him out. That last sentence is especially important. Human beings are naturally curious about what they haven't fully discovered. When everything about a person is immediately available, curiosity fades. This doesn't mean playing games or acting emotionally distant. That's manipulation. Real mystery comes from authenticity. You don't reveal your entire life story in one conversation. You don't constantly seek reassurance. You allow someone to discover you over time. That's how genuine intrigue grows. But attraction isn't only about what you reveal. It's also about how you make another person feel seen. This is another area where experienced men often have an unexpected advantage. Instead of trying to impress with endless stories about themselves, they ask thoughtful questions. They notice details others miss. They remember small things. When a younger woman feels genuinely understood, not judged, not interrupted, not analyzed, she often associates that emotional experience with the man himself. In her mind, he's not just interesting, he becomes memorable. And memorable people are incredibly difficult to replace. But here's the hidden danger. Many older men unknowingly destroy all of this by making one subtle mistake the moment they realize a younger woman is attracted to them. It's a mistake that instantly shifts the emotional dynamic, and once it happens, attraction can begin to fade. Now we've reached the point where many promising connections begin to fall apart, not because the attraction wasn't real, not because the age difference suddenly became a problem, but because the man's behavior changes the moment he realizes she's interested. This is the mistake most older men never see coming. At first, he's calm, confident, and focused on living his life. That's exactly what caught her attention. Then something shifts. He starts overthinking every message. He wonders if he's too old. He begins trying to prove that he can still compete with younger men. Without realizing it, he abandons the very mindset that made him attractive in the first place. Pay close attention because this changes everything. Attraction often fades not when a man gets older, but when he begins acting from fear instead of confidence. Think about how subtle this can be. He starts buying expensive gifts far too early. He constantly reassures her that he'll do anything for her. He apologizes for things that don't need an apology. He laughs at jokes he doesn't even find funny. He avoids expressing his real opinions because he's afraid she'll lose interest. From the outside, it looks like kindness. Psychologically, it often communicates insecurity, and insecurity changes the emotional dynamic. Most men never realize this. Healthy attraction requires mutual respect. The moment one person begins chasing approval while the other simply receives it, the balance starts to disappear. Imagine a seesaw. When both people contribute equally, the relationship feels alive. But when one person places all the emotional weight on their side, the movement stops. That's exactly what happens when a man begins treating attraction like something he has to earn every single day. Here's where it gets interesting. Many younger women aren't looking for a man who worships them. They're looking for a man who respects himself enough to have standards. That doesn't mean becoming cold or arrogant. It means understanding that confidence and boundaries work together. For example, suppose she repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute without a good reason. An insecure man may pretend it doesn't bother him because he's afraid of losing her. A secure man stays respectful but values his own time. He might simply say, "No problem, let me know when you're sure you're free." Notice what's missing. No anger, no guilt, no desperate attempt to convince her, just quiet self-respect. That response sends a powerful psychological message. I enjoy spending time with you, but I won't abandon my own standards to keep your attention. Ironically, that kind of emotional strength often earns more respect than endless accommodation ever could. But attraction isn't only about boundaries, it's also about emotional leadership. This doesn't mean controlling someone, it means remaining emotionally grounded when life becomes uncertain. Everyone faces disappointment. Plans change, misunderstandings happen, stress appears. In those moments, many people unconsciously look for emotional stability. A man who remains thoughtful instead of reactive creates an environment where trust can grow. And trust is one of the rarest forms of attraction because it cannot be rushed. What happens next may surprise you. Many long-lasting relationships begin not with dramatic romance, but with repeated moments where one person consistently feels emotionally safe, respected, and understood. Those moments accumulate. Over time, they become something much deeper than excitement. They become admiration, and admiration lasts far longer than infatuation. But there's one final piece of the puzzle that ties everything together. It's the biggest misunderstanding older men have about younger women. And once you understand it, every lesson from this video will suddenly make perfect sense. If you've stayed with me this far, you've probably realized something important. This video was never really about age, it was about value. The biggest mistake older men make is believing they have to compete with younger men on youth, appearance, or endless energy. But that's the wrong game. The men who quietly attract younger women aren't trying to be younger. They're trying to be more authentic. And those are two completely different paths. Most men never realize this. The qualities that often create lasting attraction, emotional stability, self-respect, purpose, confidence, patience, and genuine curiosity don't usually peak at 25. For many men, they become stronger with every challenge they've overcome, every disappointment, every lesson learned, every failure that taught resilience instead of bitterness. That's why some older men become more attractive with time, while others unintentionally become less attractive. The difference isn't the number on the birth certificate, it's the mindset they carry into every interaction. Think back to everything we've discussed. A younger woman may initially notice your appearance, but what keeps her attention is how she feels in your presence. Does she feel heard? Does she feel emotionally safe? Does she feel respected? Does she feel like she's speaking to a man who knows who he is? Or does she feel like she's speaking to someone constantly seeking reassurance? Those questions shape attraction far more than most people imagine. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Many younger women aren't searching for perfection. They're searching for consistency. Anyone can appear charming for one evening. Anyone can memorize clever lines. Anyone can create a perfect social media image. Very few people can remain kind under pressure. Very few can stay calm during disagreement. Very few can admit mistakes without losing their confidence. Those rare qualities create something deeper than attraction. They create trust, and trust is one of the strongest emotional foundations a relationship can have. Here's a simple challenge. The next time you meet someone you're interested in, stop asking yourself, how do I make her like me? Instead, ask, am I showing up as the best version of myself? That single shift changes everything. Because when your focus moves from chasing approval to living with purpose, confidence begins to feel natural instead of forced. You stop performing, you start connecting, you stop fearing rejection, you start evaluating compatibility. And that's a completely different mindset. Remember this, never pretend to be younger than you are. Never apologize for the wisdom you've earned. Never hide the life experience that shaped your character. The right person won't be attracted because you're trying to imitate someone else. She'll be attracted because you're comfortable being yourself. That's the hidden truth many older men overlook. Real attraction isn't about convincing someone to choose you. It's about becoming the kind of man whose presence naturally stands out. Not because you're louder, not because you're richer, not because you're perfect, but because you're emotionally grounded in a world that often isn't. And that's incredibly rare. So, if this video helped you see attraction from a completely new perspective, let me ask you one question. Which quality do you think is most attractive in a man? Confidence, emotional stability, purpose, or self respect? Share your answer in the comments below. I genuinely love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into female psychology, relationship dynamics, and the hidden truths that most men never discover. Until next time, remember, the strongest attraction isn't created by trying to become someone else. It's created by becoming more fully yourself.